On the west side of downtown Bowling Green is an area with terrific potential. Join us on Warren County Preserves as we explore the homes and businesses of this historic district. Hi, I'm Amy Bingham. On the west side of downtown Bowling Green is a historic district that developed because of the railroad and reinvented itself as housing for the college on the hill. Recently, it was the research topic for Western Kentucky University student Sarah Schmidt.
The area I've been studying consists of parts of Center Street, Kentucky Street, and Adams Street, and the intersecting blocks, the number blocks in between 12th, 13th, and some of 11th. The reason this area is important or worthy to be studied is because it is basically the place where the people who worked in various industries in Bowling Green lived during Bowling Green's industrial apex.
Well, it was a mixture of light industry and residential area, and many of the merchants and I would say middle-class people of Bowling Green had moved into that area. It was really a pretty substantially residential, and the people were well-to-do folks for Bowling Green.
That was in the late 1800s, but by the 1920s, the neighborhood had changed slightly. Ray Buckberry recalls his youthful years on Kentucky Street.
I guess it would be described in today's terms as a blue-collar kind of a neighborhood. I doubt that anyone had two cars. I would be stunned to learn that any of them belonged to the Bowling Green Country Club. My grandfather was a conductor on the Olean Railroad and had been in there since the 20s, late 20s. There was an engineer next door. Most of them worked. My mother was a teacher, and they worked in stores uptown. I don't recall any medical or legal or other professionals in the neighborhood.
In the chosen architectural styles of the district is a reflection of the people who developed the area.
In the Adams Street and Kentucky Street areas, you find a lot of four squares. These are very basic buildings, you know, that each side equals the other. They're cheaper to build because they don't have a lot of what we call ornamentation, or some people would call frou-frou on them. They do have some small decorative elements, like almost all of the four squares have a dormer in the roof line, and they almost all have pyramid-shaped roofs. They're simple to build and relatively inexpensive to build. The great thing about the ones in that area, though, is they're chiefly masonry, so they're built to last, and they do use, in what ornamentation they do have in them, limestone seals and lintels and over doors and things like that. So it's a use of local materials, again, inexpensive and indigenous to our area. There are a few cottage-type buildings in that area, residences, and there are some Victorian homes that have a lot of gingerbread on them.
The neighborhood evolved over time and was greatly influenced by the college and the railroad that created two of its borders.
Because the area was kind of converted from single-family dwellings, or the plans of single-family dwellings were converted to multiple family dwellings, it was an opportunity to make more money. During the industrial era, you could take in more boarders. When this became a college town, you could take in more students. So if you walk the alleyways behind these streets, Kentucky, Adams, and Center, 12th, 13th, and 11th, you'll see that a lot of garages have been converted into housing, and that there are outbuildings that are actually housing. So sometimes the street number might be 1300, but there's a 1300 and a half behind it. So it just shows how what was once a yard that was used for a single family dwelling, you know, was turned into more space that you could make money from.
Residents benefited from the neighborhood's location near industry and the university. Businesses also benefited from the location.
But the railroad track, because of it being there, made it also very welcoming to industry. particularly light industry where they could load things on very, very quickly. And so that included several things along the way, including a bottling plant. We had Dr. Pepper and a knee-high plant that were very close in that area. We had a large mill that was built by Mr. Will Hoyt, and it eventually became Pan American Mills. We had several light industry like cleaners.
One of the industries that was in the area and still is in the area is the Scott Tobacco Warehouse, where they make Mammoth Cave and Warren County Twist, which is a form of smokeless tobacco. And it's a product that people associate with Bowling Green, that kind of like the Corvette, that is indicative of the town.
Honeycrust Bakery was the biggest thing we had, which had this great aroma. You could smell it all over the neighborhood when they baked. And those of us who were kids would go over to the bakery at night and help load trucks. And then you maybe get a quarter or something, but you got to bring some fresh baked bread home.
These businesses and homes are full of wonderful stories. When we return, we'll hear about what life was like in this history-rich and eclectic neighborhood. Welcome back to Warren County Preserves. The West Bowling Green District had it all. Here you could live and work in your own neighborhood. Its mix of light industry and substantial residences helped the area to stay vibrant over the years. In fact, at one point, it even helped the university stay afloat.
I think the most interesting story that I found about this area is the part about how the university was in financial trouble at the mid part of the Second World War. And as a way to bring money to the university and bring students, because a lot of the men had gone to war and a lot of the women quit school in order to work or to, I guess there wasn't enough money in some cases. In order to save the university, the president brought in Air Corpsmen to take certain types of classes that they needed as a requirement to fly, and let them stay in the dorms. Well, the remaining women and some of the male students that were still there, they had to run and find them some type of housing. So the president, or the university's PR man, actually called around and found houses for all these women, and some of them were in this neighborhood in the Kentucky Adams area. And that was the beginning, really, of, in this particular region, of women living on their own when they were in a university. Granted, it was in sort of like a home situation where you had a house mother, but this was the beginning of women living off campus.
When Ray Buckberry grew up here, he was much too young to be thinking about the university in terms of education. For him, the nearby university was a playground.
If you went up to the university, there was no air conditioning in Van Meter Auditorium. So you could sit outside and listen to any music program they had, play or anything else. So we'd get under the bushes up there, go to that, and a lot of times you'd get in after intermission. And the same with Western games. If you knew the gatekeeper, well, after the game got started and so forth, well, he'd probably let you in, the kids sitting around. Western was just a great source. Where the dormitories are on the other side of the Kentucky building, those were open fields, and we played baseball and stuff over there. There was nothing between there and the heating plant. And then the nighttime entertainment up there was, they had one campus cop named Aubrey Hufnell, who lived over in Forest Park. And it was always worth it to go find Aubrey at night. He was the night cop. And you could go and say, Mr. Hufnell, we saw a light in the basement of the Kentucky building. Come on, boys, let's go see. Of course, he was humoring us. We thought, well, we're really putting one over on Mr. Hufnell. So that was a lot of entertainment. And on the weekends, we would generally go play on Western's floor till Mr. Diddle ran us out, and he was pretty good if we just played in sock feet and didn't mess his floor up. But we could always get in, because during the week we'd go down and unlock one of the windows, and we knew how we could get in, so they couldn't keep us out.
In Ray Buckberry's day, services and products were as easily obtained as stolen entertainment.
I regard it with great fondness. You could walk or ride your bicycle anywhere you wanted to go as far as being able to get places. Nothing was very far out. Covington Woods was a trip, sort of, but other than that, in the neighborhood, we had Peace's Barbershop, we had Coach Shoe Repair, we had Hinton's Bandbox Cleaners between Center and Kentucky, and we had Joe McFarland's Cleaners over on Center down at 11th, just this side of College Street School. But your grade school was there, your high school was there, everything you did was there. Garland Reeves had a market at 12th and Adams. If you went on down Adams South, D&F Market, which is still there today, and you kept on going, you got down to 14th, there was Durham's Market. And if you turned up 14th to Kentucky and started back, you would hit what was Miller's, later Simpson, later Tinsley's Market next to Cortland Apartments. And you got on down to 12th and took a right, then Simpson's Market next to where Bowling Green Junior High was, or Senior High at that time. And then, of course, going up Center Street, you'd hit Cook's Market up there. So close at hand, I guess we had whatever that is, 5 or 6 little grocery stores. Not to mention the fact that we had home delivery at that time of ice. You'd put up your ice card to show whether you wanted no ice, 25 pounds, 50 pounds, and they would stop and see your ice card, chip it off, and the kids got the chips and bring it up. Milk was delivered Elm Grove Dairy with the horse-drawn, and Al Allman was the guy who ran our route, and he'd get off with a bunch of bottles of milk. He'd drop to whistle to the horse, and the horse would go by himself down the block and stop and wait for Al, and he'd get back on. Our old Claggett was the only one, well, there was a Stevens, I think, out of Delafield, that drove a grocery truck. But Claggett had scales hanging off the back. He had his vegetables and so forth, and he would pull up and bring basically the grocery store to you. And you could come out and shop. And Willie Cook's family, T.B. Cook, Tobias Cook, over on Center Street, you could call in whatever grocery you wanted, and they would put it on the truck and bring it to you. So we had a lot of home delivery too.
Life in this neighborhood was simple and fun for Ray Buckberry, but to modern-day scholars, the neighborhood relates important stories of our past that help us to understand our present.
The thing to know about this area is that there are sections of cities in Kentucky and other places that are along rivers that are just like this, where you have, smaller houses for working class people. And that, a lot of times attention is paid, especially in historical nominations, to large houses, big examples of big architectural styles, but that these working class and middle class styles are just as important, and that the people that lived in them are equally as important as the people that lived in the larger houses. Bowling Green's history, you think of people like the university presidents, but the city was built pretty much by the working class people that, while it's a way of democratizing history, it's about writing history about people that aren't necessarily considered important, basically the cornerstone of society.
Some of the buildings here have not been well cared for, but have tremendous potential. The location, near downtown, the railroad, and the university, is as important to residents today as it was to the people who used to live here. And the mix of warehouse space and residences could mean the district once again returns to the walkable, charming neighborhood it once was. Join us next time for a tour of the past here on Warren County Preserves.